Hey, this is Isar with UX in Motion, and I'm going to show you how to do an augmented reality project in After Effects. Okay, so this is a special tutorial because I am doing this to benefit Black Lives Matter, and I have a donation page set up, and I will match donations. So if you donate $10, I will put in $10 as well. So if you are interested in donating to them, this is a good time to double your contribution. So if you click the link below, it'll take you right to that page, and you can check it out and put in your donation there. I'm also doing a thing where if you donate $250 or more, I will set up a one-on-one 30-minute coaching call with you, a career coaching call as well. Okay, now let's jump into this project because I want to show you some cool stuff in After Effects. So here we are, and this is a very simple augmented reality project here. We're not going crazy with it, but we are doing some very important tracking and animation. I will show you how to do that. Now, the inspiration for this, and here's the donation page here. I just want to quickly show you that. The inspiration for this came from Twitter. There was a really cool post from Vova Korbutov. Awesome little quick augmented reality project, clearly made in like After Effects, and really, really simple. So there's some tracking here, and we're just going to go through and build this, and we're going to do that right now. So check it out, and the link is also there. Also, download these source files. So I've included these as well. So you can just click the link in the description, and there's a download link, and what you'll get is a folder here with the After Effects, I'm going to delete this, with the like assets. So we have the footage, the video footage, and then we also have, I don't know why Mac doesn't preview very well. So we have the video footage, and then we have the screens right here. We also have a GIF reference I created in the After Effects project file as well. And then the links are here. So here's the augmented reality for you to look at, and the link to Vova's project on Twitter. Okay, so those are the assets. So let's dive into this project. So here we are in like After Effects, and I just want to show you how we have this set up. So conceptually, what we're going to be doing is we're going to import the footage. We're going to then like analyze it for the gestures. We're going to put markers on the footage to precisely time where it's going to go. Then we're going to import our screen assets from like Illustrator, and then we're going to animate those. We're not going to go crazy with animation today. I just want to show you how to set this up, and the way we're going to do it allows you to really go deep with your like animation project. We're going to track the footage, and then we're going to apply that tracking data to the pre-composition, and that'll be it. It's going to be really fun. Okay, so I'm just going to start with a new project here. And so there's a blank project. I'm going to import, so I'm going to hit Command-I to import our footage here. I'm going to bring this in, and I'm just going to drag this footage to the Make Composition icon. So it's going to make a composition with the frame rate, the duration, all that stuff. It's just already baked in there. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're just going to analyze this. And I will say, now, looking at the reference here, it's really important when you're doing these projects yourself. These are so easy to do. They're really fun. But there's one thing to keep in mind, which is that notice how he's just tapping with one hand here. Like his hand isn't crossing the frame over here, right? So if I was to like, in this region here, his hand is not crossing into the frame. Now the reason is because if you did, you would have to what's called a rotoscope, which is basically mask every single frame where the finger comes in. So if like you're holding this thing and you're tapping and it's crossing the frame, if the graphics are behind that, you have to cut those out in like After Effects. There's ways to do that, but for simplicity's sake, if you don't want to do that, just keep your content on this side of your frame and put your like graphics over there. In this case, he's done it like a third on this side, and then his graphics are here. So his hand never crosses over here. So that's a very, very important thing to keep in mind. So in the case of footage that we have to work with, I did the same thing. So you'll notice that I shot it so there's a place for the visuals to live. It's very, very important. So that's the first thing we'll know, is that it came in with that. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to put markers on the timeline here. So we're swiping here. So I'm going to put markers at the start of each gesture and at the end so I can time precisely when to start and stop my like animation. So we're going to go here, and you can see that when I press, I really start dragging around there. Now there's this marker tool that you probably have never used here. I'm actually going to add the markers to the footage because I'm going to use these markers in another composition. So if you hit Control 8 with the footage selected, it'll actually add the marker there. If you double click it, you can describe it. So I'm going to say start drag. And I'm going to scrub through here, and I can see I kind of finish right about there. I'm going to say, and I hit Control 8 again, double click, end drag. Okay. And if I hit plus on the keyboard, I can zoom in here, and I'm just going to keep scrolling through. And I can see over here, we're going to start this one, and we're going to then swipe up. So I'm going to maybe say it starts right around here. We don't have to be super crazy precise because we can tweak this. Start drag, and maybe zoom out. I'm going to go up, and I can see that we kind of stop maybe right about there. Option 8, double click, end drag. This is like seriously project best practices at this point. I know this seems a little tedious, but this is what it takes so that when you go to build it, it's really easy. So you can tap here, and you can see that we kind of just tap right about there. Option 8, and we're just going to call that tap. Okay, so now I have the markers set up in my project. So now I can visually see here where to put my animation timing. So now what we're going to do is we're going to track this footage right now. So let's do this. So we're going to select the layer, and in our effects, actually there's a command up here under animation. We're going to go track in Boris FX Mocha. So now make sure your layer is selected or this won't work. So under animation, track in Boris FX Mocha. This just comes with After Effects. This is just out of the box. So that's going to pop open Mocha, and it adds it to the effects presets here. Now you just click where it says Mocha there. It's going to launch Mocha. For you, if this is your first time, you'll have a login screen. You can just close that. And it puts the playback head, where you were. So I'm going to move it to the beginning here. And the way this works, we don't have time to get into deep dive into Mocha tracking, but this is a planar tracking tool. This is as close to magic as you're going to get when it comes to visual effects work. This is a really cool tool. I'm so glad they've included it with like After Effects. It makes these projects so easy. So all you have to do is click this little tool here. It says it's the X-Spline Layer tool. We're going to click that, and I'm going to just click and select a region. Now, if I was going to analyze this footage, what I want to do is I want to track the card, but in some regions here, you'll see that, the thumb here, it kind of like moves into these regions, so it's not so helpful for the track. So I'm just going to grab this top region here, and I'm also going to just like select outside of this. This is the way Mocha works. Is it works best if you grab some tracking region that's a little bit extended from what the region is that you want to track. The next thing to do is just turn on these switches here. Transform, scale, rotate, skew. We'll do perspective as well. And now I can just hit the track button here, and this will track forward. So I'll hit that. And it's going to now just go through and track all my frames. And you can visually watch it here. You can watch this, and you can see how it's tracking. And you can see that's really, like if you look in this region here, it's pretty much sticking to it. It's doing a really, really good job. There's a lot of contrast here. So Mocha's pretty happy with this track. And so depending on your computer, for me, it takes maybe 20 seconds. For you, it might take a minute or two to actually go through all these frames and track that. And again, I just used this button here, the track forward button. And there's some really cool features here. We're not going to get into it because there isn't enough time for this to cover everything in this lesson. This is just a very quick basic track. Okay, so that's done. Now, if I want, I can just hit the play button, and I can visually see, okay, this did a really good job of tracking. I'm going to stop that. Next step, hit this button, save the project, okay? File, exit. Kind of a weird UX. But now we're back here. I'm going to twirl down where it says tracking data. I'm going to say create track data, and it'll say layer 1. I'm like, okay, fine. All that does is that puts some Mocha keyframes here, which we're just going to ignore for now. So let's go back to our project. We have this data in here. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go back to our project and we're going to import our screens here. So I created a file in like Illustrator, and let's just have a look at that real quick. So I did kind of just put all the assets in on top of each other as layers, and just kind of helped me for preparing this project. There's a lot of different ways to get your design assets into After Effects. You could be coming from Sketch, Figma, Illustrator, Photoshop, Adobe XD. I've seen lots of different ways. This is just one way, and I've created tutorials for all those different ways as well. So if you're coming in from a different program, don't worry about it. In this case, I put everything on its own layer because that's how you want to bring it in from like Illustrator. So it looks kind of like a mess here. And if I hit it in the actual design mode, it's like, it's kind of weird. So, but the key takeaway is these are all on their own layers and their names. So I'm going to go back to After Effects. I'm going to hit Command-I. I'm going to bring this in, and I'm going to import this as composition retain layer sizes. So where it says footage here, bring it in as composition retain layer sizes. Always do that. Okay, so that's going to bring it in as its own composition. I'm going to double click that. Now I'm just going to change the background color because the part of the graphics are black, so it causes some problems. So if I hit Command-K, I can just click this swatch here, and I'm just going to make it gray. This is just a transparent layer, but it just helps for previewing. Now, very quickly, I'm just going to prep this file a bit. Now, the concept is that we're going to do the animation in one composition, have it timed, and then bring that into our master composition. So a couple things here. The first thing is I'm going to go back to our footage. I'm actually going to copy this layer here. So I'm going to click that, copy it, go back here, and I'm just going to paste it in here. Now I'm just pasting it so I can actually view these markers on the timeline. There's so many different ways to time your graphics. This is one way, but it's a pretty quick and easy way. So I'm going to now trim my composition to the end of this piece of footage here. So I hit O to get to the end point here. I'm going to hit N on my keyboard to close the work like area, and I'm going to control click on the work area here, and I'm going to hit trim comp to work like area. That makes the whole composition now timed precisely to the timing of the footage. Now if I go back to my footage here, one other thing to check, if I hit Command-K, you'll notice that the frame rate is 29.97. That was what I shot the video at. You always want to make sure that your animation frame rate is the same as your video frame rate. So I'm going to go back here. I'm just going to double check that because sometimes it's not. You can see here it's to my usual default of 60 frames a second. So I'm going to change that to 29.7. Okay, great. So, and in fact, what I might do at this point, to be honest with you, is I might just repaste this because it's really important that your footage all match. So if I paste that in, I can see, yes, it's actually in the right place. Sometimes it may be like a frame off, and it looks like actually it is. So if I hit N on the keyboard and trim comp, it'll actually shave like a frame off. Things get weird when you go from like fields to frames and stuff like that. Anyway, you don't need to worry about that. Just make sure you follow those steps of making sure that your compositions have the same frame rate. So if I hit Command-K, here it's the same frame rate. Okay, great. So now I have this layer. I'm just going to turn off the visibility, and I just want to view these keyframes here, these markers on time. So the other way, like a good professional best practice with After Effects, is you can also change the layer color to help you better understand visually where things are at. So I'm going to actually change these colors, and I'm just going to prep this file in a professional way so that I can jump in and time things very cleanly. So this is also, it's not just an augmented reality tutorial, it's also like a professional best practices working lesson as well. So I'll keep that color there. Now for the status arrow, these layers here, and the donate button, I'm going to change the colors here. We'll make that like peach, and this thank you one will make like blue. So you can see visually now, these are all different colors. Now what I can do is I can actually trim these down a bit. So I know that, and I'm just gonna block these out. So if I select these layers and hit Option right bracket, I can actually trim these layers down. And I'll start to just kind of block out a very rough duration for these layers. So I'm just kind of eyeballing it here. I'm actually gonna put this over here, and this would maybe be, got the tap here, and I'll put this over here. Okay, so you can see that if I just click here, I've kind of just blocked out these screens with a little bit of like overlap, and it's not really too important where they are at this point. I just want to be able to quickly kind of look through these and scan and just make sure these are set up correctly. Now let's just go back and apply the tracking data and then like animate, because that's always really exciting. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to bring in the screens that we just did, and I can just drag in the composition. You'll see that this is actually, it's not the full dimensions. I made this composition 1,000 by 1,000 pixels. So when we see it here, it's actually going to show up over here. Now, this is very important. I really encourage you to work this way. So if I hit Command-Shift-T, I can bring up my like effects again, where we have Mocha. Now, I want to show you something, and this is really, really important. So we have the track data created. We now can export that tracking data a couple different ways. One is corner pin, and for this lesson, we're not going to cover that. We're going to cover transform. So I have the transform here. I'm going to apply it to the screens layer here. So we're going to export this tracking data as transform. We're going to export it to our target layer here, and I'm going to hit apply export. Now it puts it up here, and you can see that it's actually stuck to it, right? These graphics are actually stuck to this card now, which is great, except if I click this layer and I hit U on the keyboard, I bring up all the keyframes, and now we can see that all these position, scale, rotation properties have been made, which is great, except if I want to change the position of this thing, I can't really do that. It's going to just put it in some weird spot for just one frame, so that's no good. So instead, I highly recommend you make a null. What that is just a blank layer that we're going to put the tracking data on, and then we're going to parent our graphics to that layer, and then we can have a lot more control. So I'm going to hit Command-Shift-Y. You can also go to Layer, New, Null Object up here, and it's just called a null. Now I'm going to go back to my Mocha, and I'm going to say Export to Null, and it's going to be Transform. I'm going to hit Apply Export. If I hit U on the null, I can see that there's this tracking data there. It looks really, really weird, but check this out. Now I can take my graphics layer and I can parent this to the null. And if I hit play, you can see it's all tracked now. And now what's cool is I have full ability, if I wanted to independently like control the rotation of this, to have it be in the right visual place. It gives me the ability to do that because I'm not actually changing keyframe data at this point. It's all being controlled here. So this is a really, really great way to work. So we have that going. And just to show you how good this track is, if I go back in here and let's just add this Black Lives Matter logo to the card real quick. So if I paste that layer in here, and let's say I want to actually make it be white. So I can control click and go layer styles, color like overlay. It adds this color so we can visually see it. If I twirl this down, we'll just make that maybe be white. Now, and if I just resize this, if I hold down Shift, put it up here in the corner maybe, and we'll just do very, very, like this is very like approximate. This is not like high quality work, but I want to show you how good this track is. So now if I parent this logo here to the null, we'll just extend this here. You can see that it's totally stuck to it. And that's just amazing. So you can see how powerful this tracker is for doing all this stuff. Okay, so let's go ahead and animate this now, and then we'll make sure it's timed up really good. Okay, so we have the swipe to donate. Now I'm going to be controlling these animations here with a null as well. So I'm going to just go layer, new null object, and I'm going to move this to the top, and I'm just going to rename it, call this master null. Sometimes I like to rename these. I'm going to start parenting these things. And the reason is because when you use parenting, it saves you on keyframes. So you don't have to use tons of keyframes. So I'm going to now leave this, and I'm just going to lock this layer too, so that I don't even accidentally mess with it. Again, the key takeaways, I want this visual information right here. So now I'm going to parent these layers here, which is, these visual layers, and where it says start drag and end drag, I can just zoom in, hitting plus and minus on the keyboard. Now I can visually animate this. So I'm gonna hit Option P on the keyboard. And again, if this is too advanced for you, if this is too advanced, I recommend you go back and watch some of my other tutorials on how to use After Effects. I'd say this is like an intermediate level lesson here. So now if I go to end drag, I can just slide this over. And you can see that we're actually visually seeing some of the assets from the next screen. We're not going to worry about that right now. We're just going to move these off the screen. So I'm just using the keyboard. I could also just click and drag if I wanted to, just move these off. And the reason they're all attached to it is because they're parented to it. So we have this first drag here. Now I'm going to go back to my next drag, and you can see that these graphics come in here, and we're going to fix that. So now I'm going to parent these other layers to the null. And the reason I'm doing it over here is because now that the null's here, when I start the parent, it'll now put these screens out in space on a chain. So now I'm going to go through, I'm going to grab the donate button, I'm going to grab the arrow, I'm going to grab the $sign, and I'm going to do that for now. Let's see here. I think what we want to do is so we got those. Do we want to grab the status? I can't remember if we wanted, I think we wanted to animate that independently. Maybe we'll just grab all of these. Okay, I don't quite remember, so we'll have to experiment and see how it goes. So now I'm going to add these to the null. Now if I scrub back, you'll see that because they're parented now, they all move together. Now, let's animate some numbers. So the way to animate numbers in After Effects is you have to use this effect called the Numbers Effect plugin. I'll show you how to do that. Now I have this layer here as just a visual reference. So we're going to rebuild those numbers in After Effects as something that you can animate, and then use this just as a guide and then hide it. So quickly how I would do that is I would hit Command Y to make a new layer. So if you go to Layer, New, you can do a new shape layer here. I just hit Command Y on the keyboard to create a new solid, and it's okay what the color is. It doesn't really matter. Just make sure it's the same dimensions. It makes this big red solid. Now, if I go to my effects and presets, if this is blank here, I would type in numbers, and then I can just click and drag that here or down here, and it first asks you, what fonts. We'll go Open Sans, regular, left. Okay, so first thing you'll see is these red numbers down here, and it's all kind of weird. So what we're going to do is we're going to clean this up. So where it says decimal places 3, we're just going to click and type 1 or 0. Where it says size, we're going to put in 129. Don't ask me, I just happen to remember that. Where it says color here, we're just going to make it white. Okay, and you can't see it, but with the effect selected here, there's actually this little control anchor point that you can just grab. It happens to be right on top of this here. And I can just grab this, and in the value here, let's put in 10. And you can see why we're using this as a reference. So now we can just slide this on to get it pretty close. So now I'm going to call that good, and I'm going to hide this 50 ref here. I'm going to click here, and let's just clean this up a bit and make it more professional. So we'll call this Animating Numbers, and let's change the color of here to make it to match the same color. What was it? Peach? No. Uh-oh. The worst part of any tutorial is watching somebody fumble through the colors. All right, we got it. So now I'm just going to trim this down here. So I've hit Option left bracket, and I'm going to zoom out, move my playback head here, and hit Option right bracket so that this is all trimmed down, and now it's part of this. So now what I can do is, if I go back to the start here, is I can actually start to animate these numbers, and this looks pretty weird. So let's just start here, and we can adjust these keyframes as needed. So where it says value offset random, we have 10 here. I'm going to start the keyframe process. Now, if I click down here and hit U, I can view this keyframe, and if I move my playback head over, I can change this. So we'll change it to like 50, and this is how you would like animate this number. So now that we got the numbers animating the numbers, let's have them, you know, on the actual graph itself. So we can see from our markers here, we have a start and like end drag. So I'm just going to move our keyframes over here so that they're right on top of these markers on this timeline. So we have this here and here. So now I can see that the numbers will count up. So now we have 3 layers here that are all doing the same thing. And if you've seen me talk about UI, UX prototyping workflows, I highly recommend using as much parenting as possible so that you can update your projects very, very quickly. So I'm just going to parent. It doesn't really matter, but I'm going to just parent this layer, the $sign layer, to this little status dot right here. And this will allow me to just control one position of this property. So with this layer selection, I'm going to hit Option P, and then I'm going to hit K on the keyboard to jump to the next keyframe. And from the keyboard, I can just move this up. And we can put it right about there. And you can see now we've just built a very simple little number counting thing right here. That's really, really cool. So now let's just go back here and double check that everything's working. And it looks like these 2 screens are working. And again, I like to work in a system that I call like block and polish or block and refine, which is just get the set pieces where I want them, when I want them, and then I can worry about the timing and the motion and all that kind of stuff. So we're just kind of blocking out and making it work. Now, for this tap transition here, you can see that this comes in maybe a bit too soon. I'm going to move this out here. Okay, now let's add this tap. Now, I've actually included this as a resource. I incorporated this from another tutorial on how to create a finger tap like animation. This is just a very, very simple version. So I'm just importing this After Effects project, double-clicking the composition, selecting this layer, copying it. I'm going to go back to my screens. I'm just going to paste this in right now. And if and I'm just going to move this up the stack here so that it's a little higher up here. And I'm just going to drag it out approximately where the tap is. And now we're going to work with that. So first thing I'm going to do, because this is a solid, I'm going to change this to white. So where the color is up here, you can just click that and it'll change to white. Now you have to be careful with this asset. If you just click and drag it, sometimes it'll just drag the shape. You'll get some funky stuff like that. So sometimes I have to be careful. I like to just click the layer and then from the keyboard, I'll maybe move it down. And again, like sometimes you just want to click and drag it and it just does something weird. So because there's no position properties in this like animation, you can kind of just put it wherever you want. Now that we have this tap in here, we can now time this up and we're going to then animate that position again. So we tap, I'm going to hit Option P and jump over maybe 10 frames and just slide this whole thing over from the keyboard. Okay, and again, because this isn't parented down here, it's just going to show up like this. So now I can parent the thank you to the master null. And if I go back, you can see that it just comes in. And you can see that because it cuts, we need it a little bit like this. Now, notice that this is off to the side. So I'm just going to move this off frame here. And I'm going to go back to my null here and recenter this so it's not visually showing there. So now, if I just scrub through, I can see that it swipes over. Where it starts drag, it goes up, counts. I've got a tap here. And we can see maybe this tap comes in a little soon. We'll get that timing going on. And then we have this here. So let's just maybe ease these keyframes real quick. So I'm going to click and drag to select those. Go keyframe assistant, easy ease. This will just smooth them a tiny bit. Now when it comes to augmented reality transitions, you don't need to go too eased with them because you're interacting with human gestures. So that's a little bit different. So let's go back to our footage here and just quickly kind of scrub through and just play this through and see how it looks. See how close we got. Okay, that seems pretty good. That's not bad. And you can see this tap here is a little bit off. So let's just check that out. So you can see that I tap and this, our graphic is coming in a little too soon. So let's do this. So if I double click, oops, brought up the footage here. If I go back to my composition, maybe slide this back a little bit and then slide this back a little bit as well. I can actually hit U on here to close this up. So it's going to tap and then go out. We can go back to our footage here and we scrub through. That seems a little bit better. Okay, now you can see that once we've built the bones of this out, there is a ton of potential for using this pre-composing to do all kinds of really cool like animations here and detail it and make it look super polished and high-end. Now going back to our reference, you can see there's a lot of very cool, subtle things that are happening. And part of that's because it's all timed up, but there's also some cool little, you know, like cascading style stuff like this, which is nice, all that kind of stuff, which is a possibility. So, but this is just a good place to start. These are so fun and easy to create. You can just shoot footage of your hand using your phone, make some graphics. So if you do that, I would love to see those. You can post those here. I want to thank you for watching this. This was really fun to create. Again, would love it if you would head over and click that link below and donate to Black Lives Matter, and I will match your donation. And again, if you want to jump on a one-on-one call with me for some career coaching advice, be happy to do that with you. Put in $250 or more and we will schedule a call. Thanks so much and take care.